Chapter 201. Colby noticed that Roxanne was scrolling through her Twitter feed for a while and asked out of curiosity, "Are there any hot topics that are worth keeping up with?" Hearing that, Roxanne gathered her thoughts and gave a nonchalant smile. "Nothing much. I'm just looking at some gossip." Based on her current relationship with Lucian, his news could only be taken as gossip. Colby wanted to strike up a casual conversation with her and continued asking, "What is the gossip about? Did something happen to a celebrity recently?" Roxanne didn't expect that he would probe further. She was momentarily stunned and answered vaguely, "It's not a celebrity. I forgot their names and just clicked on it casually once." She finished speaking, she then changed the topic as if nothing had happened and didn't wait for Colby's reply. "The recent project is quite demanding, isn't it? I'm already feeling tired from it." Colby raised his brows subtly and went along with her change in topic. Roxanne got off work early that day, and as Colby sent her there, she reached the kindergarten just when they were done for the day. Archie and Benny scrambled out of the doors. At a glance, Roxanne immediately found Archie and Benny among the swarm of children and went over to bring them back. In the crowd, Estella looked at her pitifully. When Roxanne met her gaze, she felt a pang of inexplicable guilt in her heart. However, when she recalled the news that she had just seen, she genuinely didn't want to face Lucian again. Thus, she could only harden her heart and bend down to touch Estella's head, saying, "Essie, can you wait for Daddy with Miss Ward? I still have some things to do, so I have to go back quickly." Once she finished her words, she didn't dare to look into Estella's eyes again. She hurriedly got up as if she was running away and brought Archie and Benny into Colby's car. Archie and Benny Sull had some impression of Colby, and they greeted him politely when they got into the car. "Hello, Mr. Galloway." Colby gave them a warm smile. He started the car and slowly headed toward Roxanne's house. As Archie and Benny sat in the back row, they looked at Colby's face through the rearview mirror and fell into deep thought. Previously, they thought that Lucian wasn't bad and made Roxanne choose again. But note that Lucian was getting married to someone else. They thought that Colby wasn't bad too. On the other hand, when Caden saw the news, he recognized the woman in the photo at first glance. After he saw the headlines, he immediately contacted Lucian. "Mr. Farwell, this news. Do you want us to make a clarification on it?" At that moment, Lucian was busy with his work. Hearing Caden's words, he looked up at the phone that Caden passed to him. When he saw the contents on the screen, his brows furrowed slightly. He didn't even realize that they had been photographed. In the picture, the two of them indeed seemed like a loving couple. When he saw the comments below it, Lucian bit his lower lip. After not receiving a reply for some time, Caden was puzzled and urged him, "Mr. Farwell?" Lucian retracted his gaze from the phone and returned Caden his phone indifferently. "There's need for that. Just leave it." If he made a clarification, it would inevitably drag Roxanne into the mess. Recently, Roxanne had been wanting to cut all ties with him. Therefore, she certainly would not want to be involved in such a scandal. Hearing that, Caden hesitated for a moment before agreeing to it. Seeing that Lucian had no other orders, after waiting for a while, he quietly retreated from the Atlas. When he heard the door to the office being gradually closed, Lucian paused his work, got up, and headed to the floor-to-ceiling window. By then, Roxanne should have seen the news as well. However, he didn't know how she would react to it. Chapter 202. Seeing that it was almost the end of the day at the kindergarten, it was only then that Lucian gathered his thoughts and drove toward the kindergarten. Based on Estella's habit, he thought that he might even see Roxanne at the kindergarten. When he reached the kindergarten, he realized that he wasn't that late. However, Roxanne came earlier than him. and Archie and Benny had already left as well. Estella had the habit of waiting with Archie and Benny for Lucian to fetch her, but now she was all alone, holding onto Pippa's hand timidly. "You're here, Mr. Farwell." As Pippa knew Estella's situation, she was very cautious when dealing with Estella. Seeing that Lucian finally came, Pippa heaved a sigh of relief inwardly. Lucian nodded and took Estella over from Pippa. After they got into the car, Estella was still in low spirits. Lucian frowned and couldn't help but ask, "Why? Are you alone today?" Estella knew what he was trying to ask. She lowered her gaze, and there was a hint of grievance in her soft voice as she said, "Miss Jarvis came to pick Archie and Benny up." When he heard that, Lucian's gaze darkened slightly. Although Roxanne wanted to distance herself from him, he knew that she always had a soft spot for Estella. When Estella saw Roxanne, there would be no way that she would let the latter leave so easily as well. Since the situation was out of the normal that day, the only reason for it would be that Roxanne saw the news. So is she avoiding me because she saw the news? Thinking of that, Lucian felt an inexplicable sense of displeasure deep down. Throughout the entire journey, the atmosphere in the car was depressing. Once they reached home, they saw that there was someone sitting in the living room. At that, Lucian couldn't help but furrow his brows slightly. "Mom, what are you doing here?" After Sonia left the cafe in the afternoon, she initially wanted to find Lucian for a chat at his office, but after giving it some thought, she decided not to interrupt him at work and headed to the manor to wait for him to come back. She waited for an entire afternoon, but never had she expected that he would have such an attitude. The moment he stepped in, Sonia, who was initially displeased, became even more upset. "What's wrong? Do you mean that I can't come over? Do you wish that I don't ever come here again so that you can hide things from us and marry Roxanne?" Upon hearing that, Lucian's expression turned dark, and he instructed Catalina, "Bring Essie upstairs." Noticing the tension building up between the two, Catalina didn't dare to waste a single second and hurriedly brought Estella upstairs. However, Estella slowly trudged up the stairs. "Just now, I think I heard Grandma mention Miss Jarvis. Is Daddy going to marry Miss Jarvis?" But the news clearly said that Daddy was getting married to Miss Pearson. Estella was slightly puzzled, but she felt that if Lucian was going to marry Roxanne, it would be a dream come true. Meanwhile, Lucian remained expressionless as he sat down on the single couch opposite. "Sonia, what's with the news today? Aren't you going to explain it to me?" Sonia questioned him coldly as she suppressed her anger. As soon as she said that, she saw Lucian looking up and meeting her gaze coldly. Their eyes met, and Sonia felt an oppressive aura surrounding her, causing her to restrain her rage. There was a hint of mockery in Lucian's voice as he refuted, "Did you not give me an explanation as to why the news of my marriage with Aubrey got out as well? Besides, you didn't even ask for my opinion." He had always known that Sonia wanted him to be with Aubrey. However, never would he expect that she would resort to such harsh means after the news of I got out. Lucian knew that he could no longer remain silent. Sonia felt a lump in her throat, and her expression changed. Although she felt rather guilty deep down, she replied stubbornly, "It has already been so many years since your marriage contract with Aubrey. The two of you were going to be together sooner or later. I'm just announcing it for you ahead of you. Besides, you humiliated Aubrey at old Mr. Queen's birthday celebration previously, and we ought to make it up to her." Chapter 203. Hearing Sonia's words, Lucian pursed his lips mockingly. "If I don't intend on doing so, then how do you plan on settling Aubrey?" A glint of shock flashed across Sonia's eyes before it soon turned into rage. "What are you saying? How many years has Aubrey waited for you? How much has she sacrificed for you? Now you're telling me that you don't have such intentions? The marriage contract between our two families has been circulating for so many years. Have you ever thought of how others would view us if we call it off? Lucian coldly questioned her back. Why do you think I haven't provided any response to this throughout the 6 years? I already told you that I don't need you to interfere in this. I will settle it myself. In other words, he was certain that he never intended of fulfilling the marriage contract with Aubrey. Having understood his intentions, Sonia's expression changed slightly. She had heard the Pearson family mention this. Before that, Lucian personally told Aubrey about his decision. Back then, she was full of doubts and thought that with Lucian's personality, he wouldn't let the marriage contract exist for so long if he didn't have the intentions of marrying Aubrey. But now she was personally hearing those words from Lucian. Sonia clenched the armrest of the couch tightly, her face turned dark. If you don't plan on fulfilling the marriage contract with Aubrey, then what are you planning to do? Are you going to marry Roxanne into our family again? Think you must have forgotten what she did back then. Double quotes. The mention of Roxanne. Lucian knitted his brows again but didn't respond. Back then, you would have been with Aubrey long ago if it weren't for her. Our family wouldn't have been treated as such a joke as, well, she left without saying goodbye, but leaving behind a divorce agreement and even abandoned Estella, causing such a young child to be sent back to the country. She even turned our family upside down. I will never allow a woman like her to ever step foot into our family again. At the thought of Roxanne, Sonia felt her blood boil. She slammed the armrest on the couch forcefully. I don't care about what you think now. If you want to marry Aubrey, fine. If you don't, then so be it. Anyway, I've already spread the news of your marriage with Aubrey. The Farwell family will never go back on our word. Your marriage with Aubrey is set. With that, she didn't give Lucian the opportunity to refute and glanced at Estella's room upstairs, continuing in a softer tone. After Aubrey hit Essie last time, she hadn't had the chance to properly apologize to Essie. I'll arrange for them to spend more time with each other during this period to improve their relationship. Essie has to accept Aubrey as her mother eventually, seeing how obstinate his mother was. Lucian furrowed his brows. After all, it was his marriage, but they had already reached the stage of discussing the engagement ceremony before he could even give his opinions. Sonia was even willing to forgive Aubrey after her beloved granddaughter was hit. He didn't know how much Aubrey was involved in the who. Seeing that he remained silent, Sonia took it that he was agreeing to it, and her anger dissipated. Also, the woman, the picture on the news today, is Roxanne, right? Lucian remained silent. I'll just take it that the news today was an accident. The news of your marriage with Aubrey has already spread. I don't care what you think, but you'd better keep a distance from Roxanne. Be more mindful of how your actions can impact the two families. Seeming to remember something, Sonia frowned, adding, and get that woman to keep to herself. I don't wish for to be a repeat of the news today. The woman in the picture can only be Aubrey. Before Lucian had the chance to reply, Sonia got up and strode off. Chapter 204. After sitting in the living room for a while, Lucian instructed Catalina to get Estella down for dinner. Estella had been staying in her room obediently, thinking about what Sonia just said. She was full of anticipation as she fantasized about what it would be like if Roxanne became her mother. During dinner, she couldn't help but ask, "Daddy, are you going to marry Miss Jarvis?" She then gazed at him expectantly. Ever since Estella came back, she only said a few words every time. Although she spoke quite a lot with him, that was the first time that she said such a long sentence to him. Lucian was taken aback before he realized what Estella was asking. As he thought about Estella's attitude toward Roxanne, he was curious and asked, "Do you like her?" As expected, Estella nodded. "I like Miss Jarvis the most." When he saw the joy on Estella's face the moment she mentioned Roxanne, Lucian frowned slightly. "What do you like about her?" After all, Estella had only spent a pitifully little amount of time with Roxanne, but she seemed to be very dependent on the latter. Besides, she seemed even closer to Roxanne than Lucian. Lucian couldn't seem to think of an explanation for that and could only take it that it was because of their mother-daughter bond. Estella hadn't thought of that question before. Now that Lucian asked her, she tilted her head and thought about it seriously. After a pause, Estella counted on her fingers and answered seriously, "Miss Jarvis is beautiful, gentle, cooks well, and she is very nice to me." Listening to her response, Lucian was filled with mixed emotions as he asked, "But Miss Jarvis still has her 2 sons. Do you want them to stay with us too?" To that every day, Archie and Benny's existence still bothered Lucian. Though they were obedient, and Lucian was very fond of them, he felt bad for them every time he thought about how their father had heartlessly abandoned both the boys and their mother. On the other hand, Estella simply wore an innocent expression, and her eyes sparkled. "Archie and Benny are very nice to me, and I like them a lot too, like Miss Jarvis, and I also like Archie and Benny." With Thatch then remembered her initial question and looked at Lucian expectantly. "So, are you going to marry Miss Jarvis, Daddy?" "I want Miss Jarvis to be my mommy. If not, why would Daddy ask me so many questions about Miss Jarvis?" As she thought about that, Estella became even more hopeful and thought that Roxanne was definitely going to be her mom. "But why is Daddy taking such a long time to answer me?" Estella's eyes were filled with confusion, and the anticipation in her heart died down slightly. "Daddy?" she cautiously urged him. Lucian snapped back to his senses, and his gaze darkened as he avoided Estella's eyes. "No, at least not for the time being." Refusing to give up, Estella frowned, and she recalled what Sonia previously said, but Grandma said that Daddy wanted to marry Ms. Jarvis. Before Estella could finish her words, Lucian interrupted her in a low voice. It was just a misunderstanding. Lucian didn't wish to continue with the conversation and filled Estella's plate with food. "Let's eat. Rest early after you're done eating." Estella got excited and talked so much previously just because she thought that Lucian was going to make Roxanne her mom, but now that she heard his response, she lowered her gaze dejectedly and lost her appetite. She forced herself to finish the food on her plate before she jumped down from her chair and went back to her room without saying a word. Upon seeing how dejected Estella seemed, Lucian knitted his brows and fell silent.